All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Kate Burrs,
Here.
J.R. Huddleston,
Here.
Deborah Johnston, Bill Lukens,
Here.
Larry Pratt,
Here.
Craig Romy, Caitlin Turner, Linda Marvin. Here.
All right, would you join me in the pledge of allegiance? All right. Okay, a couple of housekeeping items before we get into the meeting agenda. If you have any conflict of interest items, council, please let everyone know before we vote on it. Craig is calling in. If you remember this year, South Dakota codified law changed how we can vote with someone on the telephone. As long as we don't have a nay vote, a voice vote is okay. If we get one no vote either up here or on the phone, then we have to go back and do a roll call. But we don't have to do roll calls for everything anymore because someone is on the phone. Microphones. As always, the microphones are your friends. Get up close and personal with them. We still have situations where people in the audience aren't hearing as well, and people online aren't hearing as well. They're your friends, they're not invite. Get up and close and personal with them. Need a motion to approve an amended agenda. Under the current claims, on page 1, U.S. Geological Survey, you'll see an item there for $4,480. That's for our water, our gauge in Fall River. If you look at that one, that's from October 1st, 2021 through September 31st, 2022. If you look at page 10 of your current claims, you'll see another bill from U.S. Geological Survey, operation of the Fall River Gauging Station from October 1st of 2020 to September 30th of 2021 for $44.35. We typically pay in arrears. So the bill on page 1 would have us paying ahead of when we actually use it. So I'm asking to remove that one until we get that cleared up, why not show up on the agenda. So that would change the current claims from $61,641.80 to a new amount of $57,161.80. So again, amended agenda, change the current claims from $61,641.80 to $57,161.80.
I make a motion to approve the agenda with the current claims being reduced from $61,641.80 to $57,161.80.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Need a motion to approve the minutes from the September 7th meeting.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 7th council meeting.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Need a motion to approve the bills in between.
Make a motion to approve the bills in between for $175,961.60.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. Need a motion to approve the amended current claims.
Make a motion to approve the amended current claims, $161.80.
Second.
Discussion?
I have a question, Robert.
Yes.
I don't have my packet with me, so I'm not sure what page it's on. I'm sorry. We got a Christmas thing, John said it's okay to buy for $50,000.
Do you remember who the vendor is?
I do not. I didn't bring my packet, and I just didn't get it done.
I think he's
But
talking about
the question I have is, this is the second time we've done that. John Holden Boyd ordered these Christmas things for their $2,000 fees. Are these still continue?
Karen, which one do you think it is?
Temple display.
Page?
It is, I think, page 8. I may have missed that one, sorry. No, it is page 8. Amount for $1,577.13.
Parks was advised by John Gregory to spend money on these Christmas things. The budget, though, they were looking at repairs and maintenance budget, but that's not where it comes out of. I think there's money in the overall budget, but it shouldn't come out.
I do remember this was discussed, I can't remember if it was in admin finance or that purchase had been approved by the city administrator, even though there wasn't an actual line item for Christmas decorations. And it was questioned at that time. There was some concern over it. I'm trying to justify it just that discussion did take place because the purchase had taken place.
So do you have a single question, Craig, or two? Are you asking to have this item removed? Or you wondered if there will be like purchases going forward?
No, I'm not asking to have it removed, because I'm sure that's how it happened. I'm just wondering how many more than thousands of dollars we're spending on Christmas decorations. And did they check on the prices before they bought them, or how did, I know John okayed it.
There was cost comparisons done.
So at this point, we don't have those exact answers in front of us. It would be helpful to put those questions to finance prior to the council meeting, so we can actually look into it and have the answers for you, rather than trying to figure out the answers during the council minutes. But to your direct concern about, are we going to have these light purchases going forward? I would hope not. My expectation is we won't until we have a good discussion about it.
And I did talk to finance about it, I'm okay with what we bought. I'm just concerned if we're buying a lot, that price.
And address that as it comes along.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
Without the individuals that were part of the decision, so tough to figure out why we did it. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. We're 15 seconds away from our public hearing. We'll just pause until we get there. Before we get into it, I would like to let the public know that this is the first time that I've been involved in a joint hearing seems a little convoluted, trying to figure out the right steps, why we're doing it this way, we're doing it this way, because this is the guidance we got from the state. All right, we're at 7:10. Don, my recollection is that P and Z will make a motion first. Is that correct?
I make a motion to recommend approval of ordinance 1235 to council.
Sorry.
All right, so we have a motion by Allison and a second by James.
Recommend approval of ordinance. What? I can't hear you. Motion to recommend approval of the ordinance.
No. So they're making a motion to recommend approval of ordinance 1235. That's the medical marijuana ordinance that will be in front of the council tonight. So then we're at 7:10. A hearing to discuss proposed ordinance 1235. An ordinance amending Title 15 Land Use, Chapter 155 Zoning, adding 155.006 prohibited uses and supplementary regulations, 155.055 cannabis dispensaries, and amending 155.002 definitions, 155.023 general commercial district, GC, B, uses permitted, and 155.025 highway service district, HSD, uses permitted. The content involves local regulation of medical marijuana related facilities.
I can offer a correction, Bob, you said, after supplementary regulations, you said 155.55, there should be 105%.
Thank you. So at this point, is there anybody in the audience that's in favor of this particular ordinance? Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor?
Hello, my name is Beth Spitzer, and
Need your address, please, Beth.
27528 Renee Court, Fox County, South Dakota. And I had a chance to read the ordinance on the website, and I just wanted to compliment everybody who's been working on it, because I think you're absolutely on the right track with it. And I have emailed, back in December, I had emailed the council members an article, and I know we have at least one new council member. So I have these copies that you can just. This article, I hope that you will take the time to read it. It has some fantastic information in it, and written by a gentleman who wrote a book about the truth about marijuana. And so I hope you'll take the chance to read it. It's a quick read. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that are in this article. And that is, it says, almost everything you think you know about the health effects of cannabis, almost everything advocates and the media have told you for a generation is wrong. They've told you marijuana has many different medical uses. In reality, marijuana and THC, its active ingredient, have been shown to work only in a few narrow conditions. They are most commonly prescribed for pain relief, but they are rarely tested against other pain relief drugs like ibuprofen. And in July, a large 4-year study of patients with chronic pain in Australia showed cannabis use was associated with greater pain over time. So it didn't help. You don't hear about that. Also, it says that research on individual users, a better way to trace cause and effect than looking at aggregate state level data, consistently shows that marijuana use leads to other drug use. So let's not forget that. It also says that legalization has not led to a huge increase in people using the drug casually, but rather the number of Americans who use cannabis heavily is soaring. So that's very interesting. Finally, cannabis users today are also consuming a drug that is far more potent than ever before, as measured by the amount of THC it contains. In the 1970s, the last time this many Americans used cannabis, most marijuana contained less than 2% THC. Today, marijuana routinely contains 20 to 25% THC. So this is a completely different product. Finally, I just want to make the point that this is going to have an effect on our town, our county, because it affects hospitals by the increase in emergency room visits, and it also increases crime. And from that same article, just the final thing here is that it talks about how in the first 4 states to legalize marijuana for recreational use, those were Colorado and Washington in 2014, and Alaska and Oregon in 2015. And combined, those 4 states had about 450 murders and 300,000 aggravated assaults in 2013. And then last year, they had almost 620 murders and 38,000 aggravated assaults, an increase of 37% for murders and 25% for aggravated assault. So I just want you to be thinking about that as we think about our police and our hospital staff. And I would actually encourage you, there's one section where you're talking about what you're going to charge for a permit, and it said in the draft, it said $5,000. I would encourage you to up that to $10,000. And so I put that before the council. Thank you.
Beth, you hang on. So am I correct from your statements that you're in opposition?
I'm in support of the ordinance that has been written.
Okay, so you're in support of medical marijuana?
No, but I don't think we have a choice. We've been told by the state that we have to establish an ordinance, and so I'm just saying that I'm complimenting the council for the ordinance that was written. That as I read it, there's a population amount that you're saying every, I think it was 1,500 people would allow for one establishment, which I believe amounts to 2 establishments in Hot Springs by the latest survey data, or so that's all I'm saying. I'm not in support of cannabis at all, but I just think that we have to be, since we're being required to write the ordinance, that that you do so in a way that limits it as much as possible, is what I was trying to say.
So the 2 main folks to thank for this is Bill and JR. They spent a lot of time putting this together in the research, working with B&Z. I agree with you. It's an excellent ordinance that they've come up with. Thank you. Thanks, Bill. Anybody else that would like to speak in favor? Anybody else that's opposed?
I would like to compliment all the work.
Okay, we need your name and address, please.
Joni Hill, 315 South Main Street, Hot Springs, South Dakota. And I'd like to compliment all the work that has been done also. And I just wanted to say that I know the constituents of the state overwhelmingly supported it, and there's no way to go back, and so we should proceed.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? Come on down.
And it's not, there's no working around it. I'm not completely opposed to marijuana. What reason I'm saying opposed is for clarification regarding the current ordinance. So I just had some clarifications because if our town does allow medical marijuana dispensaries, I don't want the gray areas to ruin it for those people that truly do. So, as opposed to marijuana dispensaries, I come from the state, we have it. However, I wanted to make sure that it's a positive experience for constituents of the town. So there was just some points of clarification. I apologize if it was an initial hearing. I apologize in advance for those people members. So, one of the clarifications I had, because the reason I posed it is some clarifications for marijuana dispensaries, it says 2 per 1,500 residents. Does that include cultivation facilities? Does that include the other establishments? Sorry, that qualify under establishments?
Manufacturing.
Yeah, whether it be a cultivation, dispensary, manufacturing, they all fall under establishment. So I just was asking for clarification on that. And then the other piece was on dispensaries being located within 1,000 feet of public or private school. Does that also include family-oriented establishments? Or does the city of Hot Springs have an appeals process? So let's say I own a family-oriented business like a dance studio or something like that. I'm just using that as an example. And someone has purchased the property or wants to open a dispensary next door. Do our businesses have an appeals process to say, someone applied for a dispensary, it's next door to my little dance studio. I prefer they didn't have it there. So that was my question clarification. And then the other piece is under dispensary or marijuana establishments was regarding businesses that would affect the look, the odor, the sound. And I just want to clarify that one of the 2 marijuana establishments is a cultivation center or facility. It will affect the smell 4 times a year in the neighborhood, wherever it might be established. So I just wanted to ask for those clarifications, and that's the only reasons why I oppose the current status of the ordinance.
No,
That thoroughly confused you all of why I was opposed.
no, Sarah, it hasn't. We've had those discussions, and I'm going to try to answer those to the best of my ability. And Garland, I'm going to have one eyeball on you while my understanding, or what the statute says, is we cannot deny a dispensary as a local government. What the statute does not say is whether or not we can deny the cultivation, testing, or manufacturing facilities. What the statute does say is that we can specify the number of medical cannabis facilities or establishments, use the right words. Through our zoning ordinance, proposed zoning ordinance, and our proposed licensing ordinance, we have established the maximum number of medical cannabis establishments at 1 per 1,500 residents based on the latest U.S. Census. We have, by our ordinance, designated those allowable establishments as dispensaries. So if someone wanted to bring in another type of medical marijuana establishment, at this point, if we would have 2 entities come in and successfully apply for licenses for dispensaries, it would take a revision to our ordinance to issue a license for those other types of establishments. Our licensing ordinance does have the provision for licensing other types of establishments other than dispensaries. However, the zoning ordinance does not currently allow for anything but dispensaries. So we have not prohibited dispensaries, but by the way the zoning ordinance is written, we have not allowed cultivation, testing, or manufacturing facilities. So if any of those came into play or came in as a request, we would have to attempt to modify our ordinance to allow those. Now, so that's as good an answer as I can give you for that half. Regarding your, the second half of your question, state law specifically states that a dispensary has to be at least 1,000 feet from a public or private school. That's in our ordinance. The guidance we got from the state is that we could choose to put distance restrictions in for other types of facilities such as churches, daycare centers, other types, but we must be very careful that we don't make it so restrictive that then by adding those additional restrictions, we then prohibit the dispensaries from existing altogether. When we discussed it, I was at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting when we discussed it. Do we want to add those additional distance restrictions? And what we finally settled on is, and I don't know if it's a naive point of view, but trying to take the, okay, this is medical. And if it's truly medical, then in some cases it may be necessary. So we're going to allow it. This initiated measure 26 says we got to have it. So we're not going to put, we cannot by law put unnecessary hurdles in place. So at this time we said, no, we're not going to put in those additional distance restrictions for medical marijuana. The discussion we did have is that if, once the South Dakota Supreme Court gets done ruling on recreational marijuana, if at that point we have to deal with recreational marijuana distribution points, that's when we need to take a much closer look at how close do we want those to churches, daycare centers, and other family-oriented businesses. So if we have to deal with the issue at that point, that's when I would expect to see much more rigorous and strict spacing guidelines to those other types of facilities. So, no, you asked good questions. We've been talking about it, and this is kind of where we are at this point. Did that help?
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only reason why I posed is allowing business owners and other businesses or churches, establishments to have a hearing opportunity, just like when you do with the license. They can go forward and to have it next door. But constituents of our town to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you.
JR, do you have any comments?
I don't, Bill and I talked about it in length quite a few times. But we do, and we concur that we would address those as those come along. If there is interest in manufacturing, testing, cultivation, we would address that at that time. We are trying to become in compliance with state requirements and have ordinances in place according to state requirements and ordinance in place for medical marijuana distribution centers and I believe we've done that. We discussed many different times about how many feet away from a park, a playground, a school, a church. Those types of things naturally we may address later, but we are in compliance, we're trying to become compliant with the state requirements for medical facilities, medical distributions.
Once again, anyone else in the audience that's in favor of the ordinance or opposed to the ordinance?
One thing I want to add, I'm sorry if I can do it, in some of my research that I did, I was in serious discussions with the community about 5 times the size of Hot Springs, maybe more. And I asked, what was the effect on law enforcement? What was the effect on crime rate? And I was informed that it did not go up at all. The only thing we saw more of with the police department were false alarms, things of that nature from district dispensaries. But as far as crime, that actual crime or crime related to the medical marijuana, absolutely none. I can't answer to recreational marijuana, how that went, but as far as the medical marijuana distribution in those areas, those facilities were compliant, they were inspected at random rigorously by a city official, and they were all maintaining regulation and requirements according to their state statutes and city statute or ordinance. So I felt very comfortable with the information I provided to Bill and other council that we're in the right direction and what we need to accomplish.
All right, one last time. Anybody else who wants to speak? All right, close the public hearing at 7:32. So next is the opportunity for the council and planning and zoning. If you have any other questions of each other, for us to have that discussion. Greg, do you have any questions of planning and zoning?
If there's 4 or 5 people that want to open these, or we can have some kind of lottery, so there's only 2 available.
That's been the discussion, yes. There'll be, need to be some method for figuring out who's going to get the 2 available.
Okay, that's all I have.
Anyone else on the council?
It's not a question, but is anybody interested in how we came up with, you've heard how we came up with the number of establishments. Is anybody interested in how we came up with days and hours of operation? Right. Will you share that with the public?
Yes.
Again, going back to, this is a medical commodity. When we looked at thinking about, okay, how many of these should we have? 2 things drove, and I'm not going to say we, I'm going to take some ownership for this. So if you want to get mad, you know where to holler. 2 things drove my thinking on this is, up until a couple of years ago, we had 2 pharmacies in town. We had Shopko and we had Lynn's Dakota Market. I think the VA also has a pharmacy, but I'm not a veteran, so I don't get to take advantage of that. So if you need a prescription, most folks had 2 places to go. You could also go to a, you know, if you chose, you could get it mail order, or if you wanted to go out of town, you could do that. So in thinking about how many we should have, if 3,500 people that most folks get a prescription or multiple prescriptions, if 2 or 3 pharmacies could handle 3,500 folks, then a couple of pharmacies or a couple of distribution points that handle medical marijuana should be able to handle a significantly fewer number of people that need that commodity. Then I like the free market. I love the free market society. And if we only allowed one, you kind of got a monopoly. And I also got some feedback from a resident that after we made that, put that in the draft. And so I think I got some backup on that. So if you got two places selling, hopefully that will manage the price. And that would also then benefit the folks that are having to buy this. So that's what drove the number. And then utilizing, one per 1,500, that drives us to 2. And if the town grows, the number of dispensaries can grow. And, we're not talking liquor stores, we're not talking recreational use. So quite frankly, I checked, and when can you get a prescription from Lynn's Dakota Mart? Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., Saturday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Seems like a reasonable time. That's also a time when we have appropriate law enforcement. We all have assumptions on what the presence of a dispensary will or will not do regarding our pull on law enforcement. But most of those times we're able to have double coverage from our law enforcement, from our police department. So that fed into the decision to put those hours. So, we're not trying to be silly and say, well, from 12:15 to 12:16 every other Thursday, you can come in and get your medical marijuana. That's not only silly, I think it's contrary to what the South Dakota codified law said. So we try to be reasonable, we try to be appropriate, and that's what's before you in the form of an ordinance tonight. So I think that's the background that I wanted to share with you, and it's kind of new territory for us, and if it works, we'll keep it, and if it doesn't, we'll have to revise it.
Any other comments from council? B and Z? To the point that Bill's talking about is as far as putting the ordinance together and some of the different stipulations in it. Anyone in South Dakota knows that the state legislature or the voters approved this, and the state legislature has been working on the language of it, and we've been waiting on guidance from them. Bill and JR have a good idea of what that language is going to be, so we've got to get started on it. But we are having to fast track this ordinance. It's October, end of October, that municipalities need to have an ordinance in place. So to have that happen, we have to have our first reading and our second reading and a 20-day publication. So we need to get this going. There have been some concerns about the times, the days, those things. But that can be changed with the revision to the ordinance down the road. If we find out the days and times don't work for us, we need to get an ordinance in place. I think we've got a good start on it. And my hope is that if it needs any changes, they won't be significant changes. And there's certainly changes that the council can make based on what they need to be massaged. Again, slow walking this to make sure that we get it all done correctly. All right, at this point, we need a recommendation from P&Z about the ordinance.
Ask for a vote on the motion. Make for the hearing. In favor, aye. Aye. Same. And
Thank you, folks. So then, the next one is in front of council. Need a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 1235.
Make a motion to approve ordinance, the first reading of ordinance 1235, an ordinance amending title 15 land usage, chapter 155 zoning code, adding 155.006 prohibited uses and supplementary regulations, 155057 cannabis dispensaries, and amending 155.002 definitions, 155.023 general commercial district, GC, item B, uses permitted, and 155.025 highway service district, HSB, uses permitted. Note, the content involves local regulation of joint discussion, hearing, planning commission recommendation.
So, yes,
Note, the content involves local regulation of medical marijuana related facilities. All right, third.
motion by JR, second by Larry. Discussion? All in favor?
We need to do a roll call vote on the motion.
Yes, we do, thank you. Karen, would you call the roll, please?
David Burris,
Yes.
J.R. Huddleston,
Yes.
Deborah Johnston. Yes. Bill Lukens,
Yes.
Larry Pratt,
Yes.
Craig Romy,
Yes.
Linda Marvell. Yes.
The motion passes. The second reading of ordinance 1235 will be at the October 4 council meeting at 7 p.m. Need a motion to adjourn the joint meeting.
Please leave the motion to adjourn the joint meeting and reconvene. Motion by White, second. Christine, any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed? Roger, thank you.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it. All right, so council will reconvene strictly as the city council. So the next agenda item is.
Bob, may I ask a question?
We gotta go back to public comment. Your question?
I just wanted to clarify. Moved by and seconded by the adjourn joint meeting and only as city council.
It was my. We'll get that for you.
Want to clarify, council needs to make a motion.
No. No, that's not my understanding. No. Carla?
P and Z, they just voted to close their public meeting. Like, they need to vote to close your public meeting. Is that how we discussed it?
Well, I closed the public meeting at 7:32.
You're adjourning the joint meeting.
Yes.
We don't have to say, we don't have to motion, just be.
That's my understanding, but I also understand there's a concern that we get it right. So can I get a motion from a council member to adjourn the joint meeting with P and Z and city council and reconvene only as a city council?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the joint city council planning and zoning commission meeting and reconvene the city council only meeting.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Karen, based on what you have in front of you, are you more comfortable with that? All right, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna back up. And we need to go to council updates. We have a quarterly report from Vicky Exum. Vicky, are you with us?
Yes. Yes.
Hello to you all. Good evening. Good to see you all.
I didn't know this was a quarterly report.
Give us what you got.
I just want to do a lot of thank yous to the community for supporting the library for the past 15 years. It's great being that, and it's great to see that there's so much support in town for the library. We get in between 100 to 200 people a day. It's closer to 200 people a day. And it is for all reasons. It might be to use copy machines, internet, just coming in to read the paper. So I'm just really pleased with the amount of people that use our library. I also want to thank the street department for keeping the lawn mowed this summer. I know it was very difficult with the small staff they had. I want to thank the Friends of the Library for doing all the support work that they do. They just had the triathlon, the book barn, and now the selling of the paintings that they just did, and then they'll do another sale near Christmas time. We are starting the preschool fall program. The theme is with books. And Friends, the fun never ends. That will be every Thursday morning. And then we're going to be having our South Dakota Humanities one book read by South Dakotans, and it is the Children's Blizzard. It will be October 9th, and I expect you all there after you read it. It is about the blizzard in South Dakota in 1888. So I think it'll be a real good read. And if you have any question, I'd be happy to answer it for you.
Council? Any questions for Peggy? Any questions?
No, not me. Thanks for being here, Peggy.
Thank
you, Peggy.
Information
And your microphone's your friend.
I can't get any closer than this.
There you go.
I just was gonna ask, is there still any ongoing problem with the water leakage?
As far as the,
As the back, with that patio, you still have?
yeah, there's still the problem there. Have you come up to see it?
Oh, yeah.
There's still a big problem there.
Soon as we can get to that with the bodies that we do have. Okay. I just wondered if it was getting any worse, so thank you.
Welcome. I got bookmarks for you.
Peggy,
Yes,
over here.
yes, I.
I just want to give you a shout out and say thank you for what you do for the individual I bring in almost every day when it's there. He really enjoys what he does, and he's proud of what he does, and he's more than happy to be tired. So thank you for being there for me.
For bringing him in. Appreciate all the work he does for us.
I'll tell him.
Have any questions for Jane? She showed up. Thanks.
I want to thank you and welcome you back to Hot Springs. Everyone on council is aware that citywide we have a shortage of staff. Peggy has been doing a tremendous job filling in. When you look at her payroll sheets and see all the overtime, not only that she's putting in with the other staff. I appreciate it, so thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Have a good evening.
You also, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for everything you do.
All right, that takes us to a proclamation. Stephanie? We're a little behind when I mentioned I thought we would get to you.
Oh, good.
So this is Stephanie.
I'm Stephanie Ridberger, and I work for the Career Learning Center of the Black Hills in Rapid City, South Dakota. I actually taught adult basic and GED. I started out my career or my tenure teaching 2 days a week in Custer, 2 days a week in Hot Springs. And at the beginning of the pandemic, just kind of for council's awareness, we were having issues filling a staffing person here in Hot Springs. That position has not been filled, but we are serving several individuals from Hot Springs in Custer at the Custer site, and they check in there one time a month, and then they're using the distance ed programs religiously. So definitely service happens in Hot Springs, and we appreciate the idea that you would celebrate National Adult Education and Family Literacy Week with us. The services are provided across Western South Dakota. Learning Center of the Black Hills. We serve 500 people a year will enter our doors, and about 300 will actually enroll. And about 75% of those people will make an educational functioning level gain. We will have 60 graduates approximately in any year. It's not a pandemic year, the very in 2019, 2020, that was probably the roughest. But this last year, we kind of came back with about 50 people, which I thought was pretty good considering we had doors closed for a while. And everything's back up and running. So it's a time to celebrate. It's a time to really appreciate those educational experiences. And I just be the first to say that thank goodness for Hot Springs Library, who strongly supports some individuals who are going to use the Wi-Fi and internet access to get our services. So recognize that it's across the board. It's not just one entity educating, it's all entities educating adults and trying to provide better quality services and help people get out of poverty or upskill and become better members of our communities or contributing members of our communities. So I appreciate the time and the effort that you put into creating a proclamation.
Any questions for Stephanie?
I would like to get a hold of you if they were interested in that position.
All they would have to do, and actually the position is not open at this time, but if they were interested and we could, we can always talk about and revisit that. Because I would like to see it in the rural areas a little bit easier to access, quite honestly. So I think that they should call me. And I'm listed in about 1 million ways on the Career Learning Center website, but they can call me at 394-5120, or they can call my personal cell. And I'd be happy to talk to them. So my cell is 605-440-0034.
Anyone else on council?
Thank you.
So I paused at your last name, not because I didn't know it, but because I didn't want to butcher it.
No, it's big in German. We're good.
All right. So, Office of the Mayor, Hot Springs, South Dakota proclamation. Adult Education and Family Literacy Week 2021. Whereas the need for a highly literate citizenry increases as Hot Springs, Dakota moves toward an increasingly technological future, and whereas more than 40,000 of South Dakota adults do not have a high school diploma or equivalency, limiting their earning potential and ability to become strong members of the workforce. And whereas the Career Learning Center of the Black Hills enrolls an average of 300 adult education students a year. And whereas parental educational attainment is the greatest predicator of children's educational success. And whereas the Career Learning Center of the Black Hills works with community partners, news media, education and training institutes, Black Hills businesses, and the general public, and inviting the residents of Hot Springs to join in highlighting the economic and societal importance of adult education and family literacy. Now therefore, I, Robert Nelson, Mayor of the City of Hot Springs, do hereby proclaim September 19th through the 25th, 2021 as Adult Education and Family Literacy Week in Hot Springs, South Dakota, and urge my fellow citizens to learn more about the importance of literacy and to become involved with adult education and family literacy in their communities. And witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Hot Springs, South Dakota, to be affixed this 20th day of September, 2021. Thank you for all you do. It's appreciated.
Thank you for celebrating with us and for supporting the work. Thank you so much. Thank you. You really appreciate it. I would love that. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Share a copy of that. Thank you. Can't see the seal because it's Thank you. Appreciate it. Beautiful, by the way, the seal is very nice. We'll hang it proudly.
Thank you very much.
Communications from the public. Frank, you want to be a little further down the list? We got you about as far as we can.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, government officials, and members of the general public, Frank Meter, and Auditorium County Emergency Manager. Part of the responsibility for the Office of Emergency Management is annually I'm required to meet with stakeholders to discuss two plans, pre-disaster mitigation plan and the local emergency operation plan. We started in 2019. Members of all of the communities working on the pre-disaster mitigation plan. We had 5 meetings in total. We finally were able to get the plan developed. Black Hills Council of Governments was the lead agency that did the plan for us. And that plan was published in 2020 and copies were distributed to all of the communities within all of the county. Within the plan, there's mitigation strategies for possibilities of preventing major disasters, things that can be done through the mitigation grant program, et cetera, to lessen the impact of natural and man-made disasters on communities. The City of Hot Springs has a copy of that. I encourage you sometime to sit down and take a look at it. As funding becomes available, I encourage you to apply for the South Dakota Office of Emergency Management for mitigation funds. A lot of those are 85-15. Some of them are 100% depending upon the type of grant application that's available. So, questions about the mitigation?
Just, we worked a lot on it, Frank, and I appreciate all your work and all the resources that you coordinated on that. And I'm going a little bit from memory here, but just for everyone's benefit, a lot of the risks that are been identified and we're working to manage are things like emergency power backup for things like our wastewater treatment, our water wells, our other emergency facilities that we might use for emergency response. Those are things that we've applied for and would like to get emergency backup. Some of the other risks are where we have urban and rural interfaces, kind of where the forest meets the city, and where we can do fuels management. We all, if anybody was around in 2018 during the Vineyard Fire, we saw where that interface threatened our city. Fire potentially coming into the neighborhoods. And so where there's opportunities to get those grants, where we can get funding to reduce the fuel load where that rural terrain meets the city terrain, and we hopefully keep a fire out of the city limits. Those are the types of things we look at, as well as flooding and other severe weather events. And so it was quite an effort, and it's good to keep our eye on that, because they're not easy fixes, they're not cheap fixes. So really appreciate the effort, because the city does need help in addressing those issues.
One of the things on that PDM plan, that has a life expectancy of 5 years. So the current plan is in place. Annually, as a city, you should be looking at the projects that are already identified. Maybe things change, if something else comes up, we're getting ready to work on the highway built through town. There may be some issues that come up as a result of that, or whatever, that may throw into the project, and those can be added at any time to that. And as the funding sources come through my office and I'm notified of them, I will forward those on to the cities, so that you're aware of any funding capabilities that there will be for those types of projects. And I agree, one thing what Bill indicated, that Vineyard Fire got pretty scary for a few minutes. And this year has proven to be very difficult from the fire service standpoint, because most of the resources from, I'm going to say, Minnesota West were all out in California, et cetera, fighting fire. If we were to develop a huge, or have an incident of a huge fire here, we would have probably local resources to combat it, and that would be it. There would be no type 1 over 15s, there would be no heavy resources, air resources, that kind of thing to come in to assist. So kind of means that we're going to have to kind of take care of ourselves during the duration of this drought period that they're experiencing out there. So something to think about. Any other questions or comments on the PDM? The other plan that I'm going to discuss is the local emergency operation plan, better known as the LEOP. That's a FEMA requirement for funding. All counties have to have, states have to have it, and the counties have to have it in order to qualify for federal funding in the event of a FEMA disaster deck or presidential disaster declaration. Basically, this is not a public document. This is a need to know document, because it basically tells everybody how we're going to address issues within any type of disaster within our county. It's divided into 15 emergency support functions. Each one of those has a level of responsibility, as well as a level of response local. And of course, there's always the caveat, when we run out of local resources, we go to the state, or we go to our region, and then once we get into that, we go to the state, and then it goes on up to the federal level. Bring in resources to assistance. Annually, this is gone through and updated. I saw an article about 2 weeks ago that they put out, they're looking at doing away with the emergency support function format. Probably within the next couple of years, they're going to come out with a new format, which is going to change entirely how the local emergency operation plans put together. Fortunately, I won't have to do it.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there.
I did not do it. So somebody else will have to tackle that animal when the time comes.
I think your mic cut out when you were saying something there, but go ahead.
That's okay, Jay. Her name among the girls come.
You've got someone
you're tutoring, right?
There's a copy of this in each one of the cities have one, the county auditor has one, and I have one, and those are the only 4 copies in existence. Every time I update it, typically it's just changes in names or things of that nature. I've done away with putting in names, I put in positions rather than names, because people get elected, people don't run, things of that nature changes all the time, so it's just position specific. That's what I leave it at. And so there isn't a lot of editorial changes to the plan, but it's reviewed annually and the commission signs off on it annually to verify that it's been updated. Well, it's the playbook for how we're going to handle it if it comes upon us. Any questions?
I have a question about the grant process. My understanding is that depending on the size of the community, you qualify for some grants and you don't qualify for other grants. Is that, am I close to being right?
Size of the community typically does not have a lot of bearing on it. There's a presidential disaster declaration. The state of South Dakota gets a percentage of that full disaster declaration. Say it's $10 million. The state will get a percentage of that to use for mitigation projects. And when it becomes that, then it becomes a competitive application. And there's a review board in here that reviews all of the applications, and then they prioritize. A few years ago, and more than a few years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago, we had all of the ice storms in eastern South Dakota, took down power lines everywhere. For a couple of years, all of the mitigation funding that the state received was to put power lines underground in eastern South Dakota, because it was a continual repetitive loss. Every time we had a nice storm, we had to go back and rebuild the power line. So the light bulb came on, put them underground, and you don't have to deal with it. So it's based on the biggest bang for your buck. Who's going to get the best benefit out of it? And that's typically, from my perspective, in the 19 years I've had this job, that's how I've seen the majority of those mitigation grants go. It's not based on population. Rapid City doesn't have any more pull on getting a grant than Hot Springs.
Okay. I guess I had a misunderstanding or misheard some statements, but you're aware that, the city of Hot Springs has been interested in an emergency generator for proper pumping station. And we just never made it to the top of the list, for to be assisted with funding. And it was mentioned a number of times that that had to do with our population. We didn't meet a threshold to get us over the hump.
Typically, and I don't want to get into the weeds in regard to talking about those types of things, but I'll tell you, justification for a grant varies a lot of ways. If somebody writes down on a piece of paper, we need an emergency generator for a water system, and that's the only thing we put down, probably you're not going to get it. But if you collectively say, we provide the citizens X number, we provide water to Southern Hills water users, Fall River water users, we cover this and this and this, and all of the uses of the water, probably going to have a lot more power than a couple of sentences. A lot of it is how the grant is put together. And there are some, the Black Hills Council of Government is very, very good at writing those grants. So they wrote the grants for it when they got the emergency generation for the lift station and the water system. Well, they do a good job. They're professional people that know how to write.
I appreciate that. It's helpful to know that the size of the community isn't a determining factor. Thank you.
So how do you go about having the council write the grant? Is there a process?
There's a process, and typically, when I get the notification of it, there's a link on there for the grant application and who the contact person is, the Office of Emergency Management and Fear. And, I send that email, I forward that email out to everybody. And then, I kind of back away from it. I'm not in the grant writing business. I have enough of those that I have to deal with in my own job, but I'm willing to be available as a resource to help if that need be and get you in contact with the right people.
Because there is an art to writing out.
Yes, there is.
Is there any cost to that if you are accepted to the grant?
Pardon?
Is there any cost to that?
No.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Appreciate all you do, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Last question, Bob.
Frank?
Yep.
Craig has a question for you.
Back in between 1911, not 1911, 2011 and 2014, Dave and I on Public Works, you came to us where you got money from the state or something and wanted to thin out a bunch of the trees and stuff within Hot Springs. We've had a constituent for since then coming to me at least, wanting to get his trees across the road from his house thinned out, but nothing ever came of that. I'm just curious, because you said you had the money back then and then the state took it away from you. Is there any way we can go forward with doing that?
Well, the process, you're talking about the tree removal in town?
Yes.
Yeah. The process for that used to be that you could utilize the Department of Corrections hand crews, and they get away with those. And now Lane Austinson, who works for South Dakota Wildland Fire, he is the contact person for mitigation work in regard to fuel mitigation. Bill mentioned, in and out around your communities, doing things of that nature to prevent the wildfire growth. And I would suggest contacting him. I know that there are different grants through Wildland, South Dakota Wildland Fire that's available for mitigation work.
Thank you.
Who's that individual again?
Lane Austin.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments?
Craig?
Yes, not for me.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Any other communications from the public? All right. Let's move into personnel then. Can I get a motion to approve personnel actions A through H?
I'll make a motion to approve personnel items A through H. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. All right, that takes us to our next ordinances. Ordinance item B, first reading of ordinance 1236. Make a motion
To approve ordinance 1236, first reading of ordinance 1236, an ordinance adding chapter 116 cannabis establishments to the revised ordinance of the city of Hot Springs creating licensing provisions for cannabis establishments.
Discussion?
We talked about almost everything that needed to be talked about during the zoning. There's maybe just one other thing that I wanted to bring up, that I've been approached by at least one member of the public. There's been a lot of discussion on the news, things that Rapid City has been doing with their ordinance. And the question was asked, do we need to put anything in our ordinance that says you can't smoke marijuana on the street? And that is covered in the South Dakota codified law regarding medical marijuana. And so when we wrote our ordinances, we stuck strictly to the zoning issues for what we just passed on the first reading on chapter 155. And then for what we're discussing now on the licensing, we're sticking with just the licensing issues. And what the state requires for a dispensary license is very specific, it's very detailed. An applicant has to accomplish really a very rigorous test before really they could even come to us and say, I want a local license to sell medical marijuana. So, like I say, and even in the law, consumption of cannabis on a medical cannabis establishment property is prohibited. So you can't go into the dispensary, show them your card, buy your product, and consume it on site. And there's just, they've done a really pretty good job on the state law, but in 34-20G-18, unauthorized conduct, smoking cannabis. You can't do it on any form of public transportation or in any public place or any place that is open to the public. So because those things are already addressed in South Dakota codified law, we really don't feel the need to try to address it in a local ordinance, because we would just be repeating what's already in state law, which is enforceable by our local police. So I did want to address that. And like I say, there is a very rigorous test and requirements that a potential medical marijuana vendor has to go through to get a license. And they have to have that license before they can get our license. And the way the ordinance that we're about to vote on is written, if a potential vendor wants to get ahead of the game and say, I'm applying for a license, but I don't have my state license yet, but here's my $5,000. And we decide to say, okay, we'll take your $5,000, we'll take your application, but we're not going to give you your license. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, he doesn't get his state license, he doesn't get his $5,000 back. So we're protected for the work that we're going to have to do, make sure that they've gone through all the necessary things they need to do to get their license from the state. And just so you know, just because you think you might want some medical marijuana, you have to have a state ID card issued per state law before you can go in and get medical marijuana. So it's shouldn't be that easy to do. So there are a lot of things in place that hopefully this will be done right. There has to be a security system in place. There has to be an inventory control system in place. You've got to be over 21. You can't be a felon. So they've tried to put all the right things in place. And those are the things at the state level that you get your state license before you can come to Hot Springs and say, here, now I want to sell it here. So hopefully it will work. I'm done. I think.
Any other comments or questions from council?
I've got a question. What happens if a city employee is eligible for medical marijuana? Are we gonna have to put something in our personnel guide or how's the city gonna handle that?
There may be some things we have to do, Craig. I've got a few of the paragraphs from state law here.
Because you can't do it on public land, right?
Oh, no, you can't consume in public land, right? Let's see, discipline for ingestion of cannabis at workplace and working under the influence. Nothing in this chapter prohibits an employer from disciplining an employee for ingesting cannabis in the workplace or for working under the influence of cannabis.
Okay, question number 2. When we send our CDL people to be tested, I guess it's not gonna pick it up. I mean,
Yes.
what it does.
Yeah, and that's one group that my understanding, will not be able to utilize medical marijuana as a treatment.
But do you think we need to put something in our personal guide about something like that, or does the state law cover all that?
I'm not sure if we may need to clarify it. We'll certainly need to communicate with the employees because we certainly don't want to lose good employees because of a misunderstanding.
I agree.
So yeah, it's definitely going to be worth some clear communication.
I just hope the problem when it comes from the state where anybody can get it, like Colorado, employees don't have, employers don't have problems with that.
Now, I guess I have a question. So is this,
Microphone's your friend.
no, it's not. Does this, how does this affect us as far as testing? Now, once we pass all of this, does this mean that the testing for, say, truck drivers, equipment operators, does that increase or does it stay the same?
Doesn't change to my knowledge.
It seems like we have more needs.
Well, you do have it though, but we do have it as a condition of employment, that random drug testing, things of that. nature
Yeah, that's
are
in place.
Um,
Isn't that just for CDL operators?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, but and what we're getting into here is the same discussion every employer is going to have. So it's kind of outside the scope of the licensing ordinance, but it's certainly, I'm not saying it's not a valid discussion that we need to have as far as our personnel policy.
But it doesn't involve this, which we're just licensed.
Yeah, it's something that we're going to have to face just like every other employer in
I
South
didn't know
Dakota.
how much of this was all kind of thrown in the box.
No, all we're doing here is
Licensing.
the licensing and they've addressed so much of it in the state law, and the state laws also specifies what law enforcement cannot do, what, because of medical marijuana, what cannot be prosecuted, what cannot be searched. So, yeah, our police force is going to have a lot of, they have really a lot of constraints put on them because of medical marijuana.
Yeah. And I think to Craig and Dave's point, we're going to have to take a look at those personnel policies and see how we deal with, again, medical marijuana, just like any other medication. You know, if it's an opioid or something that has been prescribed to an employee, doesn't mean they can't take it. We just have to make sure we understand, can they operate a vehicle while they're taking that particular medication? So we'll be looking at our city policy and what can employees do and what can't they do.
There wasn't part, to sit down. That's why I'm asking some of these questions. I know, Craig, thinking the same way I am, I'm just wondering how that impacts us as a community as far as our city employees. That's what
All excellent questions.
And Bill's comment about awareness, making the employee know that this is a pharmaceutical. You're certainly entitled, to use it. If you have a prescription for it, then here's going to be the limitations depending on what your job is.
I agree.
Maybe you can't drive that CDL or that truck that requires a CDL.
I'm just looking forward towards us being covered.
Yep. Any other questions, Craig?
Not right now, thank you.
Council? Any other questions? All right. Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Dave Burrs,
Yes.
J.R. Huddleston,
Yes.
Deborah Johnston. Yes. Bill Lukens,
Yes.
Larry Pratt,
Yes.
Craig Roby,
Yes.
Linda Barnett. Yes.
Motion passes. And again, for the, oh, we're okay then. All right. Next ordinance, item C, second reading of ordinance 1234.
Make a motion to approve second reading ordinance 1234, 2022 appropriation ordinance.
Second. Discussion? So this is the second reading of the 2022 budget for the city of Hot Springs. The first one passed unanimously. Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Dave Burrs,
Yes.
J.R. Huddleston,
Yes.
Deborah Johnston. Yes. Bill Lukens,
Yes.
Larry Pratt,
Yes.
Craig Roby,
Yes.
Linda Barnett. Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, council. We have a 2022 budget. On to new business. New business item A, possible motion discussion to approve the contract agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract agreement between the city of Hot Springs and Winya Construction for the 2021 Martin Street Sewer and Water Improvement Project to be completed by January 31, 2022 at a cost of $193,286.60.
Second.
Discussion? At the last council meeting, you folks approved accepting the bid from Winya Construction. This is the contract agreement with them that you need to approve. Tracy is here if you have any questions. This particular one. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to new business item B, possible motion and discussion to authorize the mayor to sign and submit a DNR state water plan.
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign and submit a DNR state water plan
application with a proposed water system supply and storage project plus generators with an estimated cost of $4.245 million.
Second.
Discussion. Tracy? Would you come on down and kind of give us a highlight of your discussion? Yours and Misty's with Bill Lass. Bill is with the Black Hills Council of Local Governments. The state water plan is something that the city's always participated in.
This kind of ties in to some extent what Frank Mueller was discussing with grants, emergency things. And clarify, we have, is this on? Okay. We have actually worked extensively with the Black Hills Council of Local Governments on the grant writing. Bill Lass is our main person up there. He's been very effective. The state water plan is it's a program that it's the first step. It's kind of the front door to being able to then apply for state funding, and that can be grants or state revolving fund loan money. You have to be on the state water plan to then be able to, when you're ready for a project, to then actually make the funding application. So it's really a two-step process. So if you're on the state water plan, you're only actually listed for 2 years. So every 2 years, you have to renew. And we actually have several things that are on the state water plan right now. And some of those are on the odd year alternate, when they're expiring, some of them are even year. So this one, and I just brought along is kind of more for illustration than anything. This one is a big one that we saw the need actually about 14 years ago when we were seeing some peak demand times with our water that we were running pumping stations 94 to 95% of the day. That doesn't leave much headroom. And so we had a commission, a hydrology and a hydraulic study to determine the potential site for a third pumping station and also a third storage tank. And that is what actually this facilities plan, which was put together in 2010, is all about. So at this point, we're up for another renewal, and the actual renewal of the state water plan application in and of itself is relatively straightforward, and I've actually already updated that. But what we are adding, and this has been through some recent discussions with Mr. Lass about the emergency power generating, and where we have had a difficulty in getting grant money for emergency power generation for the Hopper pumping station is maybe not so much the population, but cost benefit analysis. And he's worked on it. We've actually tried that several times. But we got to discussing that, well, what about if we piggyback that as part of the permanent installation of this new pumping station? So Mr. Lass contacted Andy Brules at the state DANR. They used to that A instead of the there. And inquired us if that would be an appropriate thing to put in as part of our amended application that goes on the state water plan. And that is eligible. And it looks like that could be a very effective and useful way to actually get this power generation, this backup power, as part of the third pumping station. And rather than this being something that's outside on a trailer or a whole separate facility, as it would have to be out of Hopper, this could actually be part of the building itself. It could be enclosed, permanent, probably a propane fire generator that is enclosed and inside and would be part of the actual funding request, and we're ready to build this. So that's pretty much what this is. That's what the application is amended to include. The original amount for this was $3.85 million. And I added $400,000 to account for the generating equipment, which is somewhat above what we were seeing, but if the way prices have gone, it's best to, aim high. And that's what's at. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
Would we continue to seek funding to have backup for the other pumping stations?
It would be less of an urgent need. It would still be nice if we could get it from Hot Brook. And part of the reason is Hot Brook pumps to the highest tank. So theoretically, you could supply, or at least keep the town within enough water to get by, even if Evans Pump Station is out. Now, we would have to have restrictions or something if that ever came to pass. But at least that is capable. The new pumping station, the new well, will also be at the same altitude, very similar altitude as the 2 million gallon tank. So that tank and that supply would be capable of really doing the same thing, probably more effectively because of its centralized location. It would be on the west edge of town, but it would be more centralized so that your water would actually be kind of split going both directions. So our primary emphasis would be to try to get it in with this one. But of course, this still doesn't address the fact that we would like to get emergency power generation for the wastewater plant and maybe as well for Hot Brook. But this would be certainly the first step in being able to ensure that we could at least provide water in the event that there would be a massive grid failure or something that would put us out of grid power for an extended period of time.
Any other questions? Tracy, am I correct that this conversation started to put us in a good position, hopefully, to receive some of the America's Recovery Plan infrastructure dollars that may be coming forward to get this out there so that we would qualify for that, because what I recall reading is that there's a very narrow projects that will qualify for that kind of money, and water and sewer are two of them that would.
That is correct.
So in talking with Black Hills Council of Local Governments to put us in a good position for potentially being able to receive some of the funding from America's Recovery Plan Act, if I'm stating that correctly.
Yes, that's correct. That would also make this project, we've really been just keeping it on the state water plan to keep it there with that eventual intention that sooner or later we need to do it. If we want to get in on the America Recovery Act money, it's my understanding we would need to get this project rolling within the next two-year time frame, more or less, by 2024. So I guess that's 2.5 years.
Now, as far as the sewer system, the sewer plant, as far as generation, the generator and whatever other equipment we do need, would that be something later on down the road that we can actually put up to go along with the water system, if you want to both going, obviously, in a threat of.
I don't think we would want to try, because of the way the state revolving fund money works and everything. They make a pretty tight distinction between drinking water and essentially what they call clean water. So drinking water is much cleaner than what they call clean water, and that has to do more with wastewater treatment. The fortunate thing is for the wastewater plant, it wouldn't take nearly as large of a generator down there, but it's still three-phase power. I mean, it's still not, it's not something you just go to a farm supply store and get the biggest portable generator they have. It's not going to work. No.
I just, we've been going through this for quite some time.
One of the things about the wastewater plant is it still functions to an extent under gravity.
Right.
So if we did have a massive grid failure, we're not gonna have sewage backing up, flowing into the river, anything like that. So that part of it actually operates purely on gravity. Part of the treatment would not happen, but since it's a containing system and goes out to the holding ponds, we would actually not be in the type of violation if that type of situation would occur. So that's a very, very fortunate element of our design of having technically what's called a closed system.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, thanks so much.
Tracy,
Yeah, Craig.
is there any money that comes along with that would go forth and help us put a new well and tank go for it?
Actually, this well and this tank, the location that was chosen in the study, does put it, it's clear up at the far west end of the golf course. So it would actually, even though it's primarily for this main part of this city's water system, it would provide a closer, less restricted source that could certainly, it would help out the golf course a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Tracy. You're welcome. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item C, a possible motion, discussion to approve the Hot Springs Municipal Airport Hangar Land Lease Agreement.
I'll make a motion to approve the Hot Springs Municipal Airport hangar land lease agreement with Larry and Kathy Vetterman for the renewal of expiring land lease for a 40 by 60 square feet of airport property where the private hangar named Building 7 is currently located.
Discussion?
Is this hangar already built?
Yes.
They're just buying it?
No, his lease is expiring,
Oh,
and this lease document, just the draft lease, was in the information side of the council packets a couple of months ago. This is the document that a subcommittee of the Airport Advisory Committee worked on for 2 or 3 months along, and then forwarded to admin finance. And you'll be seeing after this one, we've got 2 or 3 other leases expiring by November. So we think we've got a pretty good document here that really cleaned up some language in the past leases that didn't make a lot of sense, and some of the language was pretty obsolete. And so we think we've made some good corrections and improvements. I think Garland has helped us a lot with it, so we're happy with
I
it.
just was curious, are we going up any on the amount of lease?
What we're doing, Craig, is right now, what our fee schedule calls for 12 cents a square foot. And some of the leases we've got out there, we're leasing them for $1 a year. And some of these are 30-year leases, and that's what we're getting away from. And if you've had a chance to read through these leases, the basic lease is a 10-year lease with 2 renewals. And so this lease will, the fee will be 10 cents or 12 cents a square foot per year for 10 years. And then the next 10-year renewal after that will be whatever the land lease rate is that the council has decided on at that point. And then when that 10 years expires, it'll be whatever the council has said at that point. So we won't be locked in at whatever for a 30-year period.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions from council? So before we vote, I want to recognize that the finance officer started the conversation by identifying that there were a number of leases that were all over the place with the language in them, the cost that was in them. And as Bill was talking about, it wasn't a single lease that everybody, had the same terms for it. So it started with recognition that we could do better. Bill took that challenge and ran with it. And has been working on it for quite a while. And the leases that will be in front of you are much better documents, as he talked about. Address not only today, but 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, much better than the current leases have. So I want to thank Finance Officer and Bill specifically, and everyone else that had worked with them on it. Carla, airport advisory folks. But Bill's put a lot of hours into redoing it. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item D, a possible motion discussion to authorize finance officer to move $3,636.
Make a motion to authorize the finance officer to move $3,636 from the 101 general fund to the 501 capital improvement fund and restrict those funds for baseball/t-ball improvements. 501-26424.
Discussion? In your packets, you will notice a list of the instructors that are donating their wage for this particular 501 improvement fund. That's where this money is coming from. So they want their wages to go back into the program. I want to thank all of them for doing that for our kids in our city. I appreciate it. And they've been doing this for a couple of years, and maybe longer than that. But it does speak to volunteerism that exists in our community and trying to move our community forward. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item E, possible motion discussion to approve an automatic budget supplement.
I'll make the motion to approve automatic budget supplement of $43,481.64, broke down as follows: $8,800.57, 602-43350-42510, $4,534.07, 604-43250-42510, $27,183, 101-42100-42510, reimbursement revenue received from Claims Associates Inc. claim number GC 20211-07261, hail damage on 6/8/21.
Discussion?
I do. Does that old police car up to the landfill, is that insured? Does anybody know that? One that we've been gonna sell for the last 5 years or so?
Do I know if it's insured?
Does anybody know that?
No.
Finance officer?
It would be disappointing that it is, but we can get an answer for you.
Well, I just, if it had insurance on it still, I just wondered if they had it checked.
No, we'll find out. Karen, could you make a note to do that? Of the vehicles I'm aware of, that was not a vehicle that we were claiming hail damage on. So looking at the funds that JR read, the 602, that would be the water fund. There were, I believe, a couple vehicles there, or at least one. 604 is the sewer department, and then 101-42-100, that would be police vehicles that were, we had claims on for hail damage.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item F, possible motion discussion to set a public hearing on October 4th, 2021 at 7:10 p.m.
Make the motion to set a public hearing on 10/4/21 at 7:10 p.m. to act on the transfer application from Big Time Pizza Incorporated for a change of business location for existing retail on-off sale malt beverage and South Dakota Farm Wine, and the retail on-off sale of wine and cider license to be used at 310 South Chicago Street.
Second.
Discussion? So you folks may recall that Big Time Pizza has been in front of you twice prior to this. The first one was to move the location, and the location wasn't specifically cited, so we brought it back in front of you to specifically identify the location to move to, and now they're moving back to their original location. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item G, possible motion discussion set a public hearing on October 4th, 2021 at 7:10 p.m.
Make a motion to set a public hearing on October 4th, 2021 at 7:15 p.m. to act on the two applications for temporary alcoholic beverage licenses from the Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce for the chamber mixer to be held at the Mammoth site, 1800 US 18 bypass on October 21, 2021, and chamber Christmas soiree to be held at the Mueller Civic Center, 801 South 6th Street on December 16, 2021. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item H, possible motion discussion to remove Brian Powers from the Historic Preservation Commission.
Make the motion to remove Brian Powers from the Historic Preservation Commission and recognize Steve Winnet as the new chair.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item I, possible motion discussion to approve contract 2021-9.
Make a motion to approve contract 2021-9 use agreement for the Fall River Swim Team to use the Evans Plunge Mineral Springs September 2021 through March 2022.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item J, possible motion discussion to approve travel training request from police officer Philip Shively.
Make a motion to approve travel training request from police officer Philip Shively to attend the law enforcement training basic certification in Pierre, South Dakota from 8/22/21 to 11/20/21.
Second motion. Discussion? So I'd like to point out that this is approving the request from August 22nd, 2021 through November 20, 2021. Obviously, Officer Shively is already in training, but we've had questions in the past why we're approving actions after an event has taken place. So this is getting the training request in front of you to have Officer Shively at the South Dakota Academy become a certified officer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion passes. New business item K, possible motion discussion to approve travel training request from Police Captain Jennifer Winscott.
Make a motion to approve the travel training request from Police Captain Jennifer Winscott to attend the RIDE Arrive class in Sturgis, South Dakota, 10/4/21 to 10/6/21.
Second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business item L, possible motion discussion to approve a travel training request from Golf Course Superintendent Jason Happy.
Make the motion to approve the travel training request from Golf Course Superintendent Jason Happy.
Second.
I got to finish it. That means to attend the South Dakota Golf Course Superintendent's Association Fall Conference from 9/26/21 to 9/28/21.
Second.
I'm sorry, losing my voice.
Discussion?
Where's that at?
Sioux Falls.
Well,
Oh, wait a minute. No, that is incorrect. That is not Sioux Falls.
Rapid City.
It's in Rapid.
okay. I was just curious.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business item M, possible motion discussion to approve travel training request from Police Chief Mike Close.
Make the motion to approve travel training request from Police Chief Mike Close to attend the Fall Law Enforcement Training Conference, formerly LECC in Sioux Falls from 11/8/21 to 11/11/20.
Second. Discussion?
Is he gonna be back on duty by then?
To be determined. He's on light duty. Whether he'll be able to travel or not, we'll see. But at least the training request will have been approved for him if he is. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. On the committee reports, we don't have an admin finance. Airport advisory, Bill?
The next Airport Advisory Committee meeting is Thursday, October 7th, 8 a.m. at the airport.
Thank you. Custer Fall River Regional Waste Management, Larry?
I had to go out of town this last week, so I have my notes ready for next week.
All right, thank you. Historic Preservation, Deborah?
The next meeting is October 6th at 7 p.m. here at the Mueller Center.
Thank you. Evans Pledge Advisory, Linda?
Okay. We had a meeting on September 9th of 2021 at noon. Present were myself, Sandy Ferguson, Chris Hansen, Kathy Wren, Troy Lurs, Tom Nas, Mary Smith, Okoye Zimiga Holloway, and Allison Ritterbush per phone. We had an update on the staffing and review hours of operation. Staffing is very low with front desk covered by 5 persons, some are part-time. Lifeguards are down to 4 people. We will be going into the fall and winter months, staying closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays with incorporation of split shifts for the staff. We do not have staffing to accept large groups such as buses. Applications for lifeguards and front desk are not coming in. However, we are receiving applications for janitorial staff. Limiting hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. is not feasible as it eliminates the after-work clients from their workouts. We will have to realize if a scheduled person calls in sick, we will have to close the facility for that day. We did a review of saves correlating to reduced lifeguard numbers. Okoye related that the 3 incidents that occurred due to low staffing issues of individuals landing in the pool at the bottom of the slide became disorientated and had difficulty surfacing. This creates a very dangerous situation for all involved. We need to emphasize safety and customer service. There was an introduction of Okoye Zimiga Holloway as a new aquatics wellness director, and we discussed hiring a new part-time position to be trained as a lifeguard, and other duties has assigned to front desk, closing person, maintenance, and other duties has assigned, and we approved hiring that individual under personnel today. Other news, Allison will be the new swim coach for the swim team. Parent meeting will be September 13th, followed by tryouts on September 24th at 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. and September 27th at 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. The first swim meet will be October 4th. The swim team is currently not charged, but Allison will be implementing a user fee. Troy Lurs will be putting out an announcement at the school. We discussed looking at the entire city benefits package to see if cuts could be made there for future budget. What was the loss in revenue being closed for 2 days each week? We have to get with admin and finance for that. What do we need to do looking forward for improvements? What can we do to offer opportunities for advancement to encourage retention of employees? It was suggested to offer a sign-up bonus for new employees working scheduled hours October through December using the already budgeted unused salary dollars. Share employees between the Plunge, Golf Course, Mueller Center, and Library was also suggested, much like the city currently does between their city departments. Our next meeting will be October 14th, 2021 at the Evans Plunge.
Any questions for Linda? Thank you, Linda. Parks Recreation, beautification, Larry?
Next meeting will be October 6th at 1 p.m. at the Mueller Center.
Thank you. Planning and zoning, JR?
I have not received the planning and zoning minutes. But I will record next week.
Planning and zoning moved their monthly meeting, which would have been last week, to tonight to join with our joint council meetings. Council meeting. Public safety, Bill, JR?
Thank you, Bob. I need that. Attendees were Mayor Nelson, Alderman Lucan, Alderman Patterson, Alderwoman Johnston, Chief Mike Close, Captain Winscott, Safety Coordinator Sherrard, or the County Emergency Manager Maynard, member of the public, John Hudson. Communications from the public, member of the public present to discuss 2 concerns. First being a property on Dorn Road that is overgrown. The concern is the amount of fuel available in case of a fire. Also mentioned was a property of concern near City Park. These properties will be reviewed and be addressed, passed on to the development coordinator and the code enforcement contractor. Second concern was in regards to the number of feral cats in town. And I believe not only feral, but cats in town, that it appears Battle Mountain Humane Society has reached its capacity for cats. No solutions were reached, but we will continue to work with the MHS and also encourage residents to spay and neuter their cats to help manage the problem and keep their cats under control. A member of the public had called the committee chair with a concern about people parking over and adjacent to the crosswalk between the depot and the Upper Cross Bakery. It was determined that the yellow paint on the curb in the area was worn away and needs to be repainted. PD update, the job description and draft contract being reviewed for the school resource officer SRO position. Once these are finalized and put before the council for approval, the PD will post for the position. The school has indicated they would like to fill the position as soon as possible and would fund the position until the 2022 city budgeted funds are available. In July, the PD responded to 585 calls. In August, the PD responded to 682 calls. Whole business, 2107, daycare provider compliance. We have identified the live link issues on the application form that are not working properly and have re-identified the resources on the Department of Social Services website excuse me, that are referenced in the application form. The mayor and committee chair will schedule face-to-face meetings with family daycare providers to work with them to come into compliance with the revised ordinance. 21-10, the trespass order fees. After further investigation of the issue, it was determined that only the sheriff has the authority to charge a fee for an administrative fee, such as serving no trespass order. Therefore, going forward, the PD will not serve or issue such orders. If someone desires to have a no trespass order served on someone, they'll need to contact the sheriff's office. Excuse me. 21-13. Got a tickle. Revision to Title 9, Chapter 93.06 to conform to South Dakota Codified Law 34-37-11 regarding fireworks in the Black Hills National Forest Fire Protection District. Committee members and the member of the public that was present reviewed the proposed wording and of the revised ordinance, which will be available for information only side of the October 4th council package. We're looking for a first reading on October 18th. 21-14, posting the speed limit on Garden Street and installation of S-curve warning signs status. The committee continued to discuss the previous request by a member of the public to mark the curves on Garden Street and agreed that the S-curve warning sign should be installed. In discussing the speed limit on Garden Street, it was determined that since a posted speed limit from Kelsey Hill to Jennings is already 15 miles per hour, it would be appropriate to install additional 15-mile-per-hour signs on Garden Street at both South 6th Street and the southbound Garden Street at Kelsey Hill. 21-15, house property number requirement for visible posting at the property or structure. The committee is continuing to discuss ways to communicate this requirement to the public. 21-16, Butler Park facility use agreement with South Dakota Wildland Fire. If a new ball field is added in the facility use agreement for the Mueller Center. Discussions with South Dakota Wildland Fire indicate that if a new ball field is installed at Butler Park, which would reduce the amount of land available to them in the event of an incident management occurrence, a simple addendum to the existing agreement is all they would require. They will be providing a similar facility use agreement that will reference the current Mueller Civic Center fee schedule in the event that they need to use the Mueller Civic Center. As the fee schedule is updated, we'll provide them with that updated document, which will be attached to the use agreement. New business, we discussed the draft PD vehicle policy. Part of that policy is a general listing of major equipment for each PD vehicle. The committee discussed the benefits of grill guard and to support the conclusion of grill guards as standard equipment on PD vehicles. The value of adding vehicle designation markings to the PD patrol vehicles was discussed. It was determined that there was no operational benefit and could in some situations present an officer safety issue to the question. Was dropped. 2021 deer population survey. It's time to start planning the annual deer population survey, which will be submitted to the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks. The survey will be conducted using recommended smartphone application. It's Saturday, October 23rd as the date for the ACO to complete the survey. Another business from the members, clarification from traffic ordinance was provided regarding the limitation of on-street parking of trailers and RVs during April to October time period. Safety Coordinator Lori Shuard informed the committee that once again, the city of Hot Springs has received the Employee Safety Award from our insurance carrier. We want to thank each person for their individual contribution, the supervisors for their leadership, and Lori for her commitment and efforts. All this works together so that everyone goes home in as good a condition as they came to work. Meeting ended at 12:08 p.m. The next meeting will be Monday, October 18th at 10 a.m. at the Mueller Center.
Can I make a clarification? Remember what the subject was we were talking about? All the Garden Street signage. You mentioned Elsie Hill to Jennings. And Elsie Hill is actually the one that goes down to from the school to Minnetonka, right? So that would be the boardwalk.
Correct.
A lot of people nowadays don't know what the boardwalk really means.
Yes, you're saying correct.
So when it comes down the hill, is it still part of Albany? As it comes down the hill before it connects up with Garden? Or
I think that particular road is called Boardwalk. I don't believe it is. I think it refers to Boardwalk.
I've always known it to be,
It's
boardwalk,
South
but, I live on that street, and that is South Dakota Street. But Albany connects straight down to that
Yeah.
downhill. Okay, but, legally, I'm not positive what it is called, but it's always been referred to in meetings as a boardwalk.
I've got the map up right here, and Albany ends at the top of the hill where it connects to T's with South Dakota Street. Right, it's South Dakota Street. And
And
for
there's two
history's
sections.
sake, there used to be a wooden sidewalk that went down the cliff side of that road that was made of, it was called the boardwalk. And I'd really like to have that rebuilt someday, restoration historically.
You taking out the street.
Well, it like hung over like it was like a deck that went down. There was a sidewalk that would, because it would take too much room out of the street. So cantilever the boardwalk.
Yeah, I've seen the original pictures, but they're actually kind of merged together somewhere in the middle because the road wasn't very wide.
Yeah, it made a really neat sound. It was clumped on it going down the hill, so it was definitely.
Or rode your bike down it. It was really cool.
Yeah.
That's a really good sledding hill, because it gets closed off in the winter.
All right, any other questions for Bill or JR? Thank you, gentlemen. Public Works, Dave, Greg?
It means great.
Yeah, go ahead.
September 14th, Public Works meeting, began at 1 p.m. here at the Mueller. Those in attendance was Tracy Bastion, Dave Johnston, myself, Claudia Nelson, Bill Morrow, Shelley Brown, and forgive me for this, but there was a lady named Sarah there, but I never caught her last name. The very first thing to come up is new business. We discussed the DOT rating and sidewalk condition on the plans. That is still ongoing. Kind of reviewed so far where we're at on the clubhouse retaining wall repair. Next item would be the renewal of the state water plant, which we already voted on. Discuss salvage asphalt, which I don't understand why that was still on our list, but it is. And that is already done. Thank you. We discussed Fall River cleanup project, and that is why Sarah was there and Shelley Brown. And what that was pretty much clean up around the river. Those were all volunteers that did that. That was not set up by the city or anything, but after our last meeting, and we talked and we got together on the next meeting, which was on the 14th, and trying to put together 3 times out of the year that is within, obviously, with weather being in decent shape, cleanup projects that we might be able to work together. Now, not that they are going to be doing any type of operating of equipment or anything like that, but helping us with keeping the sidewalks cleaned up, keeping what I call the bump outs on the road clean, and going through and spraying weeds and stuff like that. They had folks that put up to 34 to 40 hours actually volunteering with that. So we're trying to put together projects that the volunteers can work with the city 3 to 4 times a year, whatever works out. But having a list of things that they could possibly do, that there is no way that they could get hurt by any means, by doing the process of whatever. And making sure that on their end, that they're covered with insurance. That when they volunteered, they made sure I need to be particular to have that coverage so they can volunteer. Now this group is Keep Hot Springs beautiful, but there are other volunteers from other groups that join. So I give kudos to all those who were helping us with that day. And anytime that somebody wants a project that they can do, please come to one meeting and we can discuss it. Moving on, we discussed the Valley View drainage. Valley View drainage improvement. We're trying to get that on the schedule. Everybody should know by now we have a very small group of employees at this point. So trying to get everything put together and scheduled is a big plus for me. Storm inlet repair on Highway 385. Now, I was on the last 2 meetings. We weren't quite sure what was going on there. We thought that was part of the highway, but that is under our jurisdiction for repair. So we're moving forward with having that grate repaired. It's not just a regular old grate, it is something that we're going to have to go to a manufacturer. We discussed a couple of the pieces of equipment. The street department that needed some repair. Let's know what was going on there. We have a truck that needs a hub repair. Just small things, thank God, on this particular list of repairs. Moving on to utilities, we discussed the Martin Street water and sewer project and kind of got an update where we are on that, and that's just moving forward. So far, we have no issues or anything with any of the property owners. Looking forward to this getting done. So we're just moving forward with all that. Old business, we have grade base and paving on Mockingbird Lane. Notified the property owners in the assessment district, and that is with Scott and Wilson. We will be getting more information as that moving forward. Our next meeting will be September 28th at 1 p.m. here at the Mueller Center. And anybody that would like is always welcome to come. Any problems or anything like that, please inform us. We're not perfect. Sometimes we oversee things. So please let us know if there's anything that's become a problem in your street. You're part of the community.
Great. You have anything you want to add?
Dave did a heck of a good job.
Yeah, I'm losing my voice.
Thank you, gentlemen. Southern Hills Golf Course Advisory, that's on me. Golf course advisory met on Monday, September 13th, 5 o'clock at City Hall. In attendance was the golf course manager, Jason Happy, committee members, Kathy Volmer, Dave Merrill, Greg Berry, Don Olstead, Neil Spentel, and Colette Miller. Jason will be starting aerated greens September 29th through the 30th. They plan on having another tethered balloon ride out of the golf course on the driving range on October 30th. Last event went off well. We'd like to have another one. Try to raise money for putting up a couple more murals in town. We talked a little bit about the clubhouse foundation repair. Dave spoke a little bit about it. Albertsons, we asked Albertson Engineer, they're the same folks that did a number of the engineering studies on the West Road building, to come out and take a look at the wall and give us an idea of what it would cost them to design a fix, potential cost of the fix, to do the engineering design is $11,970, and he was talking anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 for the repair. I think we need to go forward with the engineering design so we know what it's going to take to get it fixed. There's some concern on the golf course committee, from the golf course committee, that we talked with Albertson Engineer again and see if he can give us a couple more design options. The one we asked him to give us when Tracy and I were speaking with him was to fix the problem as it exists and return the clubhouse to its current condition, what it looks like. The hope is looking at a couple other options that maybe we can get the actual cost of the repair down. So Tracy has reached out to Mike Albertson so we can talk with him again about possibly changing the design parameters for that repair. And as I mentioned, Albertson Engineer thinks it could be anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000. The city doesn't have that kind of money currently to fix that building, but the building needs to be fixed. So we need to figure out a solution. I had talked with the folks on the committee about the fact that the golf course is an enterprise fund. It's supposed to generate enough revenue to pay for its expenses. And since it's been an enterprise fund, it's seldom has done that. So I had talked with them about seriously looking at raising the rates and the memberships. It's not a popular idea. There's no way that we could raise the memberships enough and retain any members to generate the kind of revenue that we would need to repair the building. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't have a serious conversation about raising memberships to begin building up a pot where when we come up with this kind of expenditure somewhere down the road, it doesn't have to be funded by the general fund to get the repairs taken care of. We don't do that with the other enterprise, at least two of the other enterprise funds, the sewer department and the water department. We need to have that serious discussion with them. And as a council, what we want to do with those rates. The clubhouse manager position will be open at the end of the year. Kathy said she plans on retiring. When we talked about it, talked about the golf course budget during our budget meetings. We budgeted to continue funding the position like Kathy's going forward. There's some considerations about, do we want to do it a little differently? Ask more responsibilities out of folks. We talked about that. The next golf course advisory meeting will be Monday, October 15th at 5 p.m. at City Hall, and the public is welcome. That brings us to you, Karen. Do you have anything from the finance officer report?
Well, I would like to share some
budget notable expenses for 2022, and this will be given in your handout from the September 7th meeting. We are looking at the 30 cents an hour COLA increase for all full-time employees, 25 cents an hour increase for all eligible seasonal employees up to 4 years. Estimated minimum wage and subsequent increases to all part-time and seasonal staff of 30 cents. But the actual amounts determined by the state sometime in this month. Reallocation of South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance premiums, an estimated increase in the overall premiums is going to be about 10%. Wellmark Blue Cross Blue Shield estimated an increase of 10%. Black Hills Energy noticed an increase of 11% for 6 months of 2022 due to the winter storm. $75,000 budgeted for contingencies, $25,000 earmarked for residential tax rebates, and budgeted $5,000 for fireworks.
Any questions for Karen?
I didn't hear anything she said.
Where was your?
So then you don't have any questions for her then?
Well, when you say you like Fred, and then you're sitting here playing with stuff, I can't hear nothing.
Oh. Okay,
I apologize for that.
all right. So no questions for Karen? All right, thank you, Karen. A couple things for you folks, and to Craig's point about I was fussing with some stuff. The first thing I want to talk with the council about is at the last council meeting, I mentioned that we didn't have a lot of folks that put applications in for the city administrator. We've expanded our advertisements. We went to with a source called Indeed. And what I was making noise for Craig with is by going with Indeed, we now have we've gotten 15 applications for the city administrator position. Haven't had a chance to look at all of them yet. If I neglected to mention it last time, my plan at this point now, we're getting some folks, is I've reached out to 5 professionals in the community whose opinion I respect, and will ask them to do the initial screening of the applicants. I recognize that we've been through a number of city administrators over the last 5 years, and I recognize that that screening process has been done in-house, if you will. So I think it's important that we move it outside of within the city and let some professionals who do this kind of thing more regularly than we do take a look at these applications and then weed them down to maybe 5 or 6 that they think we should seriously consider interviewing. I'll probably wait through the end of the week to see if we get any more folks from Indeed. And at that point, then forward all of these applicants onto the 5 folks in the selection committee and let them take a look at them and make recommendations to us who they think we should consider to hire. We've gone from 2 to 15 simply by expanding the announcement to Indeed. So that's encouraging. And then I'll repeat what JR has already said in his public safety meeting minutes, but the Safety Benefits Incorporated from South Dakota sent a letter to Lori Sherrard, our safety manager. Dear Lori, congratulations. This letter is to inform you that the city of Hot Springs has received the Safety and Loss Control Recognition Award from the South Dakota Public Assurance Alliance and the South Dakota Municipal League Workers' Compensation Fund. Lori has put together a heck of a program to keep our employees educated and working safely. As JR said, I'd like to thank her, and I'd like to thank all of the employees that contributed to this award. It will be presented to Lori when she goes to her safety conference in November. and then when we get that back, as we do every year, we'll make sure that we recognize her with the award at the council. That's two things I had for you folks tonight. And because Craig is scratchy and I can't hear him at this point, if someone else would be willing to make a motion to adjourn.
I didn't hear that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So Craig, since you didn't vote to adjourn, go ahead and hang on and hang up whenever you're so inclined. Have a good evening. Thank you, everyone.